Hello and good afternoon. Sorry, new technical stuff we're dealing here with at the Q4 Radio Studio. We've got a brand new studio here.
Ta-da!
So if you're watching us on the Facebook live stream on Heartland's Media Facebook page or checking us out on our YouTube channel, you'll see that we have a brand new studio here, and this is just so incredible.
Built just for us.
Yeah, and there's a lot of new stuff that's happening. We'll be more than happy to keep you guys informed when this stuff happens. So that being said, let's get started with this episode. We're covering a lot today. We have two very important guests, two representatives from one representative from Our Revolution, Illinois, as well as another guest who will be in the second hour from Degenerate Artists Against Fascism. We also have international stories as well as national stories. And first and foremost, let's talk about the one thing that affects us all, and that is the environment. So in this first story that we're covering, basically the EPA is now withdrawing from the air pollution policy. It's probably the dumbest thing we can do here in this country, but the Trump administration is now withdrawing a decades-old air policy aimed at reining in some of the largest sources of hazardous pollutants like mercury and lead. And Daniel, I know we've talked a lot about lead here on Heartland's Media in regards to it affecting our water resources, but now because of this because now we're walking away from this, President Trump, he's making these rollbacks because this is one of his signature issues, and basically he's following through with one of his campaign promises and rewriting the rules designed to fight climate change, coal ash pollution, coastal flooding, and other things. Because let's face it, Trump and his administration is clearly against climate change. They don't take it serious enough. They, in fact, refuse to believe that these pollutants are affecting
They're Chinese, as far as I remember.
Yeah. So, in other words, that's just a wonderful policy, or dare I say it, it's going to be a horrible policy that's going to affect us for generations to come. Because let's really be honest with the impact of our environment. Most of our resources here are polluted. Like, most of our water resources here are polluted, and by rolling back on it, it's going to get even worse. And we're right next door to Indiana that has the most laissez-faire policies and regulations towards large industry. The very fact that now we're withdrawing from the air pollution policy, I can only imagine that stuff's going to be ramped up even more.
Yeah, well, those industries need to make money. They don't have any good profits right now. They aren't record-breaking. It's really important that these really important industries get even more money. And that's been the opinion of the Trump administration. It's been the opinion of many other administrations. But in this case, we're taking away air policy that's trying to make the air cleaner, which, if you look at it from an actual economic policy, if you make people sicker, you're going to increase healthcare, you're going to decrease worker productivity, you're going to do all these things that in the end are just going to make the economy weaker. But it's about where it's distributed. As we know with Trump, he would rather give that wealth to a very small amount of people than give more wealth to a larger group of people by just maintaining a policy as it exists, which makes less mercury in the environment. And we've talked in many, many previous shows the extreme toxin of lead that's in the environment. And go back to when we had lead in our gasoline, how everyone was poisoned. Everyone had their IQ was lowered just because they're breathing in gasoline. And we were at some point moving away from that kind of a world, but we're moving closer towards it now.
Yeah.
Well, at least the U.S. is.
Yeah. Doesn't this remind you a little bit of like Florida Governor Scott, telling people not to even mention the words climate change or global warming, like banned those words from public life? Well,
just so you know, that the Trump administration has actually enacted that same policy in Washington, D.C.
Ridiculous.
We can't talk about it.
Let's just cover our ears and la 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 la. Let's don't tell me about these things.
Yeah,
because certain companies need to make money.
What's the argument against it? I mean, it's like trying to say gravity doesn't exist. It's like saying the Earth is flat.
Yeah, and I think we all know better than that. So, and also, I just want to interject here real quick because let's look at how this is going to affect all of us in the long run. Now, just because we live in Chicago or even in these large, cities, these metropolitan cities, don't think that this policy won't affect you or a lot of the communities here. For example, in McKinley Park, residents of and the organization, the 12th IPO, 12th Ward Independent Political Organization, basically was talking to many of the elected officials, as well as the 12th Ward Alderman, George Cardenas, as well as representatives who are trying to build an asphalt plant basically in this community. And it's a community that I live close by to, and it's basically going to be it's the estimated level of truck traffic that's going to be there is 100 to 200 asphalt trucks per day traveling alongside Pershing Road to the MAT asphalt site at 410 South Damon Avenue. So this is very close, especially on the south side of Chicago. And what I'm curious about is, okay, you're building this plant in a residential area right next to a park, okay? And I've been to that park as a kid numerous times. And what we don't know is, will this plant that's being built here follow the rules and regulations? And because we're withdrawing from this air pollution policy, as well as rolling back a lot of other environmental policies.
And don't forget just plain old corruption making you exempt from something.
Yes. Basically, what I think is going to happen is that this plant is going to be built subpar. I don't know if they're going to really follow through with any of these kind of regulations. We've seen time and time again, whenever these large industrial plants are built or any of these pipelines are built, they build it on the cheapest dollar. Pipelines always leak, and thank God that the Mackinac pipeline that's under Lake Michigan hasn't corroded away yet.
Line 5?
Yeah, Line 5. That's the name of it.
Under the Mackinac Bridge, yeah.
Yeah, under the Mackinac Bridge, Line 5 pipeline. And it's what, 50, 60 plus years old?
It was built in 1954.
Okay.
It's beyond its easement.
And how big is it? It's a really big pipe.
I don't know exactly the diameter or the size of it, but I know that there were supports that had fallen apart that got repaired. They've never turned it off. There's a huge push in Michigan to get that specific pipe turned off. And let's not forget, Michigan had the largest ever pipeline leak in Kalamazoo, the Kalamazoo River. It was 300,000 gallons of crude. And this is just one of those things I always want to reiterate. I mean, I know we're kind of diverting from the asphalt. But,
yeah.
When it comes to pipelines, we have never, ever decommissioned an oil pipeline in this country.
Yeah.
Never.
And just so you guys know, just returning back to the story, the bigger picture is that when this asphalt factory is built here, especially near the McKinley Park neighborhood, it's going to have a huge impact on community driving zoning process and passage of meaningful environmental legislation at the city level. And I'm wondering who in the city government, both at the Cook County level and at the city government level and the state level, thought that this was a good idea, because I could see some type of disaster happening. I mean, when you have these large factories being built, there's always going to be some after effect. There's always going to be something that's going to impact the environment. You're not going to tell me that, oh, you're just building this little factory here and everything's all nice, neat, and clean. That's not how things work. Me and Daniel have been in East Chicago, Indiana, and we saw firsthand the refineries, the smelter factories, and the remnants of these large industrial factories. And they're not doing their job. I mean, they're falling apart, and they're built subpar. They're built on the cheapest level. And the thing is,
throw in something on this?
Yes, let me just add in one other thing, because this is especially a huge shout out to the 12th Ward IPO, as they've reached out to us and we've been speaking to them. There's going to be another community meeting sometime in August 2018 to assess the performance, impact, and integration of the asphalt plant into McKinley Park neighborhood. And sometime later on in the month of May, we'll actually have one of their representatives on our show, so we can get a bigger picture about what this plan is going to do, how it's being built, and really the whole story of why it was decided to be put into this neighborhood specifically. Because the one thing that's going on in the back of my mind is that, okay, you build this factory here, it's doing whatever it needs to do, but then, okay, how's it going to affect the population? Are people going to move away from it? And then are the large real estate developers going to move in? Are they going to get rid of the asphalt and then make the neighborhood all gentrified and nice and get rid of all the toxic material and then move in the quote-unquote right people in so that the neighborhood looks all nicer? And then there's no mention of the original community as well as the asphalt plant that was built there.
One thing, I could be wrong on this number, but I know I'm not going to be wrong by much. Concrete production in the world does about 5% of the greenhouse gas emissions in the planet, just because of how concrete sets, how it's made. Mm-hmm. Asphalt isn't all that different from that type of production. So what I would like to know, especially with the air quality in that area, how's that going to be affected? Because you're effectively going to have a huge amount of volatile chemicals that are going to be thrown into the air as gas just as a byproduct of this entire process. And I'm curious to see what that does to the air quality of people around them.
You are going to have the answer to your question because, according to this article that I'm reading, the neighborhood residents funded a local air quality monitor at West 38th and South Wood Streets. And so this is going to offer real-time historical air quality information and really the impact of this plant when it's built. And, you know, Daniel, just really, again, can you just explain to us, like, what asphalt can do to the
I'm an expert on a number of materials and toxic metals, but asphalt is not one of them.
Okay. But in regards for asphalt, is there any other, like, hazardous material that's used to mix into it?
I'm just not as familiar with the asphalt making process. I just know it's similar in how it's done with concrete. But I think we should go on to Paul. You have a story for us.
Yeah, so Mike Pompeo has been confirmed as the new Secretary of State, former CIA director, and he has said that one of his top priorities is appointing a foreign ambassador to Australia. The previous person who was penned to be the ambassador to Australia has been diverted and is now going to be the ambassador in South Korea, the sole ambassador. But this is a story out of the AP, talking with Australia's foreign minister, says the new secretary, Mike Pompeo, says that this is one of his highest priorities, which doesn't really strike me as a surprise. Australia is a huge strategic ally in the sort of Southeast Asian corridor there, and houses one of our largest surveillance and spying apparatus. Like Australia has been a major partner in a lot of our wars in the Middle East and basically a lot of our coalitions that we have for more warmongering. So for Mike Pompeo to make an ambassador to Australia a priority stands to reason. I also wanted to bring up, since we're talking about Pompeo, who's coming out of the CIA, we're inching ever closer to getting Gina Haspel confirmed as the new CIA director, and it's interesting to me to see the CIA in full propaganda mode talking about how great Gina Haspel is, and don't look at any of these, her involvement in CIA black sites and destroying of torture evidence and things like that. Don't look at that. She's great. Everybody loves her, right? Mm-hmm. Anyway, what do you guys think about this Pompeo prioritizing the ambassador to Australia?
I'm going to go with you on this one.
Well, like anyone in Trump's administration, you always have to take a step back and realize, what is wrong with this person? What are their issues? And as always, with people in Trump's administration, pro-business, pro-war, pro-business, pro-war, and trying to, of course, make American exceptionalism the run of the norm in the international community. And I think there's a lot of people who are concerned about, what's his policies going to be as Secretary of State? What's he prepared to implement, and is Trump going to hold him accountable? Because as we all know, Jefferson Beauregard Sessions III is doing his own solo crusade against the war on cannabis.
Well, actually, at this point, he's backed off now that Trump told him to.
Oh, okay. Well, fine. Okay, so Trump's reining him in.
He did a Boehner flip.
Okay, well, that's good to know. I don't know. With Pompeo.
We'll have more to say about Pompeo in a minute.
Okay, well, then go ahead.
I mean, another story.
Okay, so one thing I think is interesting, it goes back to Secretary of State, what his past, he's a warmonger.
Oh, yeah.
And that's what it comes down to.
That's almost everyone in Trump's administration.
Well, no, but this is special because he's also someone that has very openly said he believes in rapture. And rapture, from that point of view and that belief, is, okay, we need to cause a war in the Middle East, and so we need to cause a calamity there, and therefore this certain sect of Christians will go to heaven while everyone else burns on the ground below. He's very adamant about that. Now he's in a position as basically the chief diplomat to cause that sort of an event to happen. And if someone says, well, that's a little unreasonable, won't he be professional about his position? Well, if you are someone who believes in rapture and believes that the only good thing that you can do is cause rapture, then you're going to cause rapture in your position.
Yeah.
And that's a very big worry.
Have you even seen like the whole story, like what's supposed to happen during the quote unquote rapture?
Yeah, no, there's going to be probably a big flash of light, and then the chosen people are going to go up to, after I guess the blood circle's been written in the Middle East, all the good couple hundred or thousand or whatever, however many million people that believe in that are going to go up to heaven, whereas everyone's going to die on the demonic planet of Earth, and it's going to be good and it's going to be great.
You know what this reminds me of?
It's going to be great.
It reminds me of it reminds me either a story from Warhammer 40K. That's what it reminds me of.
It is that kind of a apocalyptic worldview, yeah.
Yes, and just so you guys know, Warhammer 40K is a science fiction, grim dark, and it's a whole bunch of crazy stuff, and I can't even explain it in 1 minute, but the point is, that's how ridiculous this sounds to me right now, and the fact that we got somebody in the White House as Secretary of State who's prepared, who believes in this kind of ridiculous stuff, because, there's also, I guess another part of the rapture is that only like a handful of the Jewish people will survive. I mean,
I think they're all going to be martyred. I mean, it's like move the capital to Jerusalem, cause conflict in that area, nuke the entire Middle East, Israel comes with it, and that just is like, okay, we're ready. You paid your tribute. Go to heaven.
It sounds like a disaster.
But this really reiterates. I mean, we're talking about Pompeo as in his role as Secretary of State, kind of believing in this sort of stuff in a way that wants to bring about these sort of world-ending scenarios. But this is a full cabinet of people that have similar agendas. You've got Bolton now as the security advisor. You've got, like I mentioned earlier, Gina Haspel heading up the CIA, Pompeo, former CIA head. And I can't reiterate enough that the CIA operates almost without any public interference or what's the word I'm looking
for?
Oversight, yeah. They're very sort of autonomous and sort of extrajudicial in a lot of ways, and they've historically acted to start wars, to overthrow governments, to depose world leaders. Like the CIA, I think there's a strong argument to be made that we should maybe disband the CIA. I don't think that it should really be. I don't think it serves a legitimate function within our government.
It goes back to whatever you can possibly accuse Russia of in the election. The CIA is like, yeah, we did that to a minor country last year.
Right.
And then we did it to like 20 other countries 10 years before that.
Yeah, most notably the CIA has done a lot, but if we want to roll back the clocks back to sometime in the early 1950s, the CIA was instrumental in getting rid of the democratic government of Iran. And we replaced it with the imperialistic Shah, the royal family. And the Shah, of course, like any dictator, abused his power.
And sold us oil at a good rate.
Yes, and as a result of that, the people were desperate, living in poverty. And who they turned to in their desperation? The Ayatollah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, it goes to show you that, and mind you, when Iran was, basically starting off as a democracy, they were asking us for help. They were asking us for support. And when we were...
on that note, Ho Chi Minh from the Vietnam did the same as well.
Yes, that was sometime after World War I. Ho Chi Minh went to the Woodrow Wilson administration, and Woodrow Wilson, of course, being the racist that he was, a lot of people don't know that, but he was horribly racist, said, no, you don't have the right for self-governance and rule. And the reason why Ho Chi Minh went up to Woodrow Wilson is because, hey, here's the United States. You guys were a colony. Once you know exactly what we're going through. Oh, wait, we're not the right skin color, at least according to President Woodrow Wilson.
But it goes to the fact that a lot of these issues that we are dealing with, not all of them can be said the U.S. is 100% responsible for all of these. No one else had any impact. But we've had a very, very competent hand in making these issues that we're dealing with in the present happen because of short-sighted views on either racism or, hey, we got to beat the Russians, so let's train what becomes the Taliban.
Yeah.
And teach them how to fight an empire, and then they use the same strategy against us, and we use the same strategy the Russians used.
Yeah, exactly it. And I think we have to move on to another story real quick. Daniel?
Okay, so this one's a little interesting. This comes right back to home in Chicago. So it's a very interesting piece on how the city is making it very it's taking a lot of vehicles and impounding them and then making it very difficult for people to get them back. And it's using that as a means to gain funding, a few $1,000s at a time, to fill up holes in the budget. So in many cases, if you there's a good chart that's in front of me. You can't see to our listeners. But so most vehicles are impounded by, let's see, it was over 10 million vehicles were impounded, or 10 million instances were just because of a suspended license or a revoked license. So what happens is you have a license, you get pulled over by the police for probably broken headlight or something. There's a story in here that had someone that was like that. And then they go, oh, your license is revoked, so you get taken, either get put in jail or you're fined. And then your car gets put in an impound lot. So now, in most people, they need their car to work. People don't just have cars because, like, hey, I really like a car. If you're someone that says, hey, I really like a car, you already have the money to not worry about the impound. So this is for those remaining people. So the car goes into impound. Maybe it's $3,000, $3,500, and it actually doesn't matter whether or not the charge against you is true. So there's times where it's like, oh, you had a broken headlight. Oh, the headlight wasn't broken, but we already impounded it anyway, and there's no defense you can have if you're innocent, so still pay us up $3,500 that you can't give us because we've taken your car away so you can't work to make the money to do that. So then eventually it gets sold at an auction, and then you're left with, even though it's sold, you still have to now pay how many thousands of dollars of fines that you have to pay, and then they charge late fees, and then you go to jail for not paying the things on time. So, but the city gets to say it's making revenue back, even though it increases the prison population, decreases GDP, and does all these very nice things. But this just goes into that the city's what we've been saying. Like, same with the city. It's a short-term view on how to make money that doesn't realize how much it's costing over the long haul.
What this is another neoliberal policy, and let's face it. Some time ago, me and Daniel were interviewed on TYT by Cenk Uygur, and I said, I mentioned about Chicago, and the one thing I said to Cenk is, and I want all our audience members to notice too, if you live in Chicago or live outside of our state, Chicago is not a democratic city. It is not a liberal city. It is a neoliberal city. And what happens here is that we have policies that are being implemented by quote-unquote Democrats in Cook County and in the city government. And in turn, these policies are mostly directed at making people's lives worse. You have people going to jail for just dumb reasons now. I mean, what? Like, I only can imagine somebody in jail and somebody asking them, hey, why are you in here for? Oh, I'm in here because I couldn't pay my late fees for my car. Wow, real violent criminals. A good thing our justice system is targeting these people, right? It's a really good thing that we made debtors' prisons illegal 100 years ago. I mean, it's a good thing we did that, and they're not back right now.
Yeah. They totally exist.
Yes, and again, we're also ignoring the fact that the prison industrial complex has a huge influence because of money in politics, because of Citizens United, because of the McCutcheon decision. Money in politics plays a huge role in impacting our elected officials, not only at the federal level, but at state level, county level, and city level. And, people need their vehicles to get to and from work. Who knows if there's an emergency, they have to get home quick to take care of a relative or a loved one, or even help out a friend because, oh, no, hey, look, I need your help. Can you please get over here quick? And, they don't have a car. Because our city government was so wise to pass this decision to impound vehicles of countless innocent people.
Well, this is, to me, it strikes me as the city operating within a capitalistic framework that likes to treat things that are abundant as though they are scarce.
Yeah.
You had this car impounded. We put it in a parking lot for a few. That'll be $3,500.
I didn't ask you to do that.
And not only that, but they're using the civil forfeiture laws, which are even harder to get around. It's one thing if it's like, hey, in other cities, hey, you're under arrest for XYZ. Do you have anyone that you can call to take your car so that it's not left out here? Whereas the city of Chicago is like, no, don't worry. We'll impound it for you and then charge you when you get out. Again, even if you're innocent or not. But especially when you do a civil forfeiture case, because it's not the city versus Kit and property that includes his
Daniel,
car.
Please don't jinx me like that. Don't put me in
that. It's going to be city versus car. So you have some previous court cases that are like that, where it's like United States versus article consisting of 50,000 cardboard boxes, more or less. The people of the state of Illinois versus 1996 Cadillac sedan. And as you all know, cars and these objects, they naturally get lawyer representation. This is ridiculous. You're charging objects with a crime. So there's been a number of cases in the past in Pennsylvania, where someone's son had meth on them, and so they repossessed their entire house under civil forfeiture, saying, "Oh, this was a den where they were dealing meth, even the guy was just a user," and then they just sold the house at an auction. And the city is making, in the last 12 months, just on the suspended licenses, they've made $10.7 million. And again, this is all to fill budget coffers that are low because the economy isn't doing good because they're arresting people and putting them in jail, taking away their livelihood for suspended licenses.
Yeah. Once again, a city government that works by the rich, for the rich, and passes neoliberal policies. And I'm only wondering, Daniel, real quick, does the article mention how many communities, like what communities of people are really affected by this policy? Like, it's mostly low-income minority communities?
Well, I mean, put it this way, if you have the money to get your car out of impound, it doesn't really matter to you. You don't get put in jail. You just pay it.
Right. But I'm guessing that in other communities, because due to Chicago's hyper-segregation and the amount of lack of resources that go into low-income minority communities, I'm pretty sure a lot of people of color, a lot of low-income working-class families are mostly impacted by this. And it's just another sad chapter in Chicago's history. And if you're listening to this and you live in Chicago, Cook County, and this angers you, this upsets you, in 2019 there's going to be an election cycle. It's not only for the race for mayor, but there will be plenty of municipal seats up for election as well. And now's the time to organize. Now's the time to get people involved. Now is the time to pick people that can actually do the job that that this current government is failing to do. So I'm asking, everyone, just please get yourselves educated, know about the issues that are affecting our city, our county, and now's the time we can make an impact. Let's not have that same unfortunate disaster that happened on March 20th where there was such a low turnout by people my age and younger. It just can't be 3%. We all have to step up and contribute. And with that being said, I am proud to introduce our first guest for the first hour. She is a representative from Our Revolution, Illinois. Can you please introduce yourself?
Hi, yes. My name's Rebecca Abraham. I'm on the board of Our Revolution, Illinois. I was a Bernie Sanders delegate in 2016, and I've been doing electoral work and organizing for a couple of candidates and organizations since 2012, 2008.
That's a long history of volunteering and organizing and getting involved. And just for our audience, in case you guys may not remember Rebecca, but we were doing the Facebook live stream of the event when Illinois State Senator Daniel Biss was endorsed by Our Revolution, Illinois, and you had the chance to also at least give us a little background into who you were. So now on our show, can you please just just give us a short example, like why you got involved in organizing and getting politically active?
Sure. So I've always had kind of a nerdy interest in politics and activism since I was a kid. My great aunt Evelyn was actually an organizer in the back of the Arts Council with Saul Alinsky. So, and then my grandparents, aunts, uncles were all part of union organizing back at the turn of the century. I'm an 8th generation Southsider from the back of the yards.
Southside all the way.
I grew up in Ashburn and then later Chicago Ridge. But that's my family's history, so I always had an interest in this kind of work. And what drew me in was when I was in nursing school around 2007, 2008. I saw a lot of inequality in healthcare. I did a clinical at Cook County Jail. I was interested in it. I volunteered. And seeing that inside of the jail and people's lives and talking to my patients there and then doing clinicals at multiple hospitals on the South Side from teaching institutions to community hospitals, I saw the vast difference in healthcare between the rich, the middle class, and the poor. I saw that the very, very rich have great healthcare and the rest of us don't really have great healthcare. It inspired me to do work as I became a nurse, labor issues in hospitals, the way healthcare is now a corporate enterprise and a business rather than an institution to help people and cure the sick. It's become a business everywhere you look. So as I got further and further into nursing, it was further pushed to do politics and organizing, and a light went off in 2013. I had my son, and that's when I was really motivated to get out there and do more than I was already doing. I had already been trained, did an internship in Washington as a nurse lobbyist. Prior to that, I was a volunteer with Barack Obama back when we had dreams and hope in 2007. And I was an old millennial that was affected by the Great Recession of 2007, 2008. So,
right. And, just focusing on healthcare for one short minute, we've always said on this show, it takes one bad day, going to the hospital, and you could lose your livelihood, your savings, your house, your job, your family, and so much more. So I think what I would like for you to at least inform our audience is, like, when you see people who are like at the hospital and unfortunately their insurance can't cover them, how often is that? What does that do also to a lot of the people who work at the hospital, who like doctors and nurses, who've been trained for years and have knowledge on stuff that I have no idea how the human body works? But I'm pretty sure, like, here you have these educated people who can fix a person, heal a person, but the system is stopping them from doing their job. What does that do?
So I have some good news and some bad news.
Okay.
I actually specialize in case management and insurance now, and then I have a history of working in intensive care and heart failure prior to that.
Right.
My husband's also a physician.
Okay.
I've been a patient. My children have been patients. My parents have been patients. So I have a very broad knowledge base and intricate knowledge of reimbursement for hospitals and kind of how the wheels all turn between policy, government payment, insurance reimbursement, and what happens on the ground. So the good news is 90% of your nurses and doctors do not care or know, and they don't want to know about anyone's insurance status. So from that point of view, everybody gets the same care. The problem is the VIPs in the hospital, the donors, the very rich people, the no-one rich people, the celebrities, get very different health care than the rest of us.
Okay.
So the good news is no one taking care of you cares or wants to know about your insurance. I've taken care of the very rich and the very poor, and when I was a floor nurse, I didn't care what insurance they had. I didn't care if they were rich or poor. I did my job, and I took care of everyone the same way. And that's most healthcare providers. I never have met anyone on the grounds who cared or treated people differently. That being said, even if you have insurance, that's when things get messy. I feel like health insurance is a farce most of the time. Everybody pays into it, and when you need it, it's not there for you. One of the biggest scams that's kind of happening now is with the Affordable Care Act. The biggest problem with it is people are paying high deductibles into it. They go into the hospital, and then the insurance company on the back end tries to find every reason to deny that claim. I've had people go in with heart attacks, for real heart attacks, with a very quick stay. Sorry if this is getting really boring for everybody listening.
Please, please
I'm
getting
go in
really
detail. Into the weeds.
No, please go into detail.
We like weeds
here.
Yeah.
I've seen people come in with real things, traumas, heart attacks, and the insurance company will deny the claim. And I'll talk to them and say, why are you denying this claim? And they try to argue that it could be treated at home through observation or outpatient care. You could have gotten that cath through your cardiologist with an outpatient appointment. It's crazy the things they try and use. They'll try to use our typing and notes to deny claims. One time I put vital signs in, clear as day. They said they weren't labeled. Claim denied.
Really? So you have some. Let's just be very clear and correct me if I'm wrong. So basically, there's somebody there in the insurance company. They're just looking at your work, who has no idea about how the human body works, all this knowledge, and they say, "Oh, this isn't correct." And
most of the time, the people reviewing it are fellow nurses. However, some insurance companies. Definitely through the Medicaid replacement plan companies. So those are through Medicaid. It's supposed to be a better level of insurance through the Affordable Care Act. They are hiring new nurses out of school who, I got into case management after 5 years at the bedside as a registered nurse, plus an additional 4 as a nurse's aide.
Right.
So I knew what these diagnoses looked like.
Okay.
They're hiring brand new nurses out of school, sometimes not nurses, most of the time, yes, who kind of don't.
So basically, you've had field experience out there, so then you can work administratively to know, like, okay, this person's writing this, you know how this works. Whereas these insurance companies are hiring people who are just brand new, no experience, haven't got their hands dirty, and wait, I should reword that. Who haven't had the experience to really work with people and patients, and that's what's going on.
And they're going off of what they see on paper. Also, there's a couple of insurance companies that they've admitted, and I always knew it was happening, and so did any of my coworkers, where medical directors at these insurance companies get bonuses for denying claims or denying inpatient claims and switching them to observation. And observation is a thing created by Medicare, this is more in the weeds and complicated, to kind of save money. Medicare actually is a great program and the best health insurance this country has. The problem is it's running out of money because instead of funding Medicare and Medicaid, the federal budget puts a lot of money towards the military-industrial complex.
That takes about, 80%
I
of
mean,
our
why
budget?
heal people when you can kill
Right.
them? It
Yeah,
seems
exactly.
so obvious.
And people say we don't have any money for healthcare, and I point to that pie chart where it's all military. I'm like, there's your
There's your money.
So, as a nurse working in a hospital, how much of your time is that you would like to spend with patients, working with them? How much of that, and how much of the hospital's time in general is dedicated towards just talking with insurance and dealing with this?
So a lot of the bigger hospitals, academic medical centers actually have a dedicated department to do this, and that's the department I'm in. There's about usually 13 nurses at bigger hospitals that deal with this. And it's a thing I like about my job, actually, is I'm helping the patient, and I'm helping I work at an academic medical center, a large one that treats a lot of low-income families and patients, and I feel good about my job because I feel like when I file a claim and I win it back, I'm doing something, and I'm keeping my organization open to continue to treat those people. So there's 13 of us to 20 depending on the medical center. So it's good that the nurses and doctors, on the grounds don't have to deal with it. Like, my husband's a hospitalist, and he doesn't know, he doesn't care, he treats everyone as equal.
I want to have one more thing. So
Go
what
ahead.
is the effect on someone if they come in for, I don't know, say a broken arm, it gets fixed, and the insurance is like, no, we're not going to budge on this. They have to pay $40,000 with money they don't have. What does that happen? What is that story for that type of patient?
I mean, it's a tragedy because although I don't see this happen, I'm sure it happens all the time, and it's devastating. You're trying to get better, and then you get a $40,000 bill that you're assuming you have to pay, otherwise it ruins your credit. Smaller hospitals do file with the credit agency. There's a rumor that hospitals don't attack your credit. That's not true. It's facility by facility. Depends on if they want to go after you. They absolutely can. It's devastating because you're trying to get better. Most of the time, especially with a chronic illness, you're probably not working or working to your full capacity. Employers are not forgiving with illness. It's tragic. What I have seen on the ground, I should mention this, and I have collected a series of stories from other doctors and nurses, is specialists at small community hospitals. And this is why we need Medicare for all. This doesn't happen at big hospitals and teaching institutions. It does happen in the communities, small hospitals where things go unchecked a lot because they're small, they're far away from the hubbub. What does happen is specialists, if you come in with something severe and you don't have insurance, or you look like you're a person with no insurance, I have seen and heard stories of surgeons walking away and saying, I'm not doing this.
Wow.
Yeah. One particular case, a decade ago, there was a patient who came in, no insurance, had a trauma, had cut off a limb, and there was no surgeon in the healthcare system that would touch him.
Wow.
And I remember they told me, tape him up, send him out.
Tape
and
him
I
up.
was like, I'm sorry, wait, what? And I was devastated. And you just hear stories from around the industry. You hear of downstate people coming in. They're presumed to be undocumented, and you hear neurosurgeons saying, like, oh, no, just we have to let them go. But would they say that if they had, Blue Cross Blue Shield PPO? Probably not. They would probably try to save that person. So there's inequities that happen, and it's awful.
And it's quite clear that here in the richest, most powerful country in the world, we can't take care of our people, and it's a system and policy that needs to change. We do need health care universal healthcare, single-payer healthcare here in this country. Whereas, we have our other neighbors are, Germany, Switzerland, Sweden, just to name a few. Canada, yeah, Australia.
They're the neighbor.
Yeah. They have, a better healthcare system than we do, and it kind of reminds me to what Bernie Sanders asked a question during his live stream, talking to some doctors and some elected officials who live in different countries, saying, "Well, what would happen if, let's say, people started adopting the U.S. policy of healthcare system in your country?" And one elected official said, "Well, we'd be voted out. People would riot. People would push back. They don't want that." And so this leads me to ask you this question then: what drove you to become a member of Our Revolution Illinois, and why did you become a Bernie Sanders delegate?
I became a Bernie Sanders delegate. I've been a fan of Bernie since 2008.
Before people knew him.
Yeah, Occupy Wall Street.
That's correct.
I marched for that. I remembered I was engaged, and I told my husband at the time, I'm like, I'm marching, and you could come with me and be part of history, or you could stay home. So we marched.
Oh, good for him. Good for him then.
I heard of Bernie Sanders back then talking about income inequality and how healthcare for all is needed in this country. And I was like, that guy. And when he decided to run, I told a friend of mine who was a lobbyist, and I was working with an organization that brings women and moms into politics. And I was talking, I want to run for office, but I'm not a rich person, so I don't know how that's ever going to happen. And he was like, you should be a Bernie Sanders delegate. It's a good kind of trial run. You get to petition for yourself. You raise money. But if you don't raise money, nothing happens. You just maybe won't be slated. But give it a shot. And so I raised Bernie some money, got petitioned for myself, liked going door to door. I liked organizing for Bernie. And it was great. So that's how I became a delegate. And from there, I guess I just kept meeting people and kept staying involved, meeting more candidates, getting more involved with NNU, National Nurses United, is my union. I'm an at-large member, but my department's about to vote for membership, so that's really exciting. So
that sounds like we've heard from a lot of people. It's a form of kind of an awakening. Is that over a long period of time? Is that a fair way to put it?
Yeah, I kind of was always on the side of politics of Bernie since I was younger. Everybody always told me I would grow out of progressivism, but I seem to get more radical as I get older.
Or you can conversely say you're getting more center if you're talking just from a European point of view.
Right, I'm getting more center.
So what was that like for people that haven't gone through it? Because not as many people have gone through that, becoming a Bernie Sanders delegate. There's only a few out there compared to the population. What was that like? You came in as a nurse that had already these ideas. Did it refine their ideas? Did it give you passion? Like, what was that like?
It gave me passion, and so part of why I take up space, and I'm kind of forceful about it, and I spread out my space, is I want to be a leader for other women, but what's really important to me is to show working class mothers or women who are caregivers that there's space here in politics for them. That's really important. Mostly in politics, we see rich white men. Yeah. If we don't see rich white men, we see rich white females. And we don't see mothers, not of young children, maybe older children. You see a drop-off of working people. You see people in their 20s very active and motivated. And then women have children. Yeah. And you see them volunteering. I feel like most campaigns I've worked on, the backbone of volunteerism is actually with women at a grassroots level. But I feel like women come out once or twice, sometimes don't feel welcome, feel overwhelmed. They have to bring their children, childcare, and then they back off. In my dream world, I would like to see more working women out there running for office. And I think when people say, like, oh, we need women and women of color and people of color to run for office, I feel like, especially the neoliberals say that, but they don't mean it. Like, It sounds like something nice to say.
And at the same time, too, we see these same neoliberal candidates then try and, because for a long time they were adopting the word liberal, and now they're trying to adopt the word progressive. And it seems, and they say that, oh, we'll follow through with these issues, but if they do, it's only half measure, never a full measure. or they say it in words, but then they say, well, we didn't have the correct political environment.
Hey, we'll
to do
protect
so.
the dreamers.
Yeah, we'll protect the dreamers, and then
Unless it gets difficult.
Or Nancy Pelosi stating that Trump's a threat, but then votes in favor of increasing the Security Act. So, I mean, it's one or the other. So my question is, and I hate to remember the past as this, but it was March 20th. That primary was very key and specific for millennials, young people, progressives, independents to go out in force, because the primary was going to help, basically select, candidates. And so now we're going to this general election with establishment picks like Lipinski, Danny Davis, Mike Quigley, and now currently J.B. Pritzker, who has the Democratic nomination for running for governor for Illinois. So as somebody who has a long experience of volunteering, being part of a lot of progressive outreach groups, being a member of Our Revolution Illinois, and being a Bernie Sanders delegate, what does it take to really get people to be involved? I understand there's a lot of issues that working class families have to deal with, but what is it going to take to get people actively to come out in force, and at the same time to maintain that? Because in 2019 we're going to have a key election, and my fear is that people aren't going to come out to vote, and then we might get Mayor Emanuel again for a third term.
Right. Ooh, it's a tricky question, because we live in a society where people are working 3 jobs to survive.
Yeah.
And people are tired after working their 3 jobs. Everything's automated, so you can't even go to the bank and make it easy. You have to do it yourself. I read an interesting article about how not only are we tired from our 3 jobs, but we're tired from self-checkouts and banking by phone. If nothing is easy anymore. So it's these little tasks that build up and make us more exhausted. I think as far as getting women involved and women of color, I think childcare is key. If more candidates and more organizations provide childcare every step of the way, I think we're going to be in a better place already. I have to give a shout out to Chuy Garcia's wife. Actually, at an Our Revolution event, I was trying to breastfeed my baby, who was screaming her face off while he was speaking. Right. She's 15 months now. She was like 3 months.
Okay.
And she pulled me aside. She's like, just do it. Just breastfeed right here. Who cares? And it was kind of what I needed to hear. And I want more women to do that. And I think that was really helpful to me. And I was like, yeah, I'm just going to breastfeed right here in front of all of these hundreds of progressives. Why not? So I feel like women have to support each other and actually support each other.
Yeah.
And then let's see, what else brings people out? Oh, millennials and young millennials. Vote. Facebook is not voting. I feel like a lot of people are like, well, I posted this great article on Facebook and it got 100 likes. It doesn't matter if none of those 100 people vote and if you don't go vote. And I feel like there's kind of like an apathy. And to the people who say everything is broken, forget it, I'm out, I'm not doing this. Yes, everything is broken. However, if you step away from the process, that doesn't fix it. It makes it worse. So people need to step in oftentimes. And with some of these kind of races that have turned terrible, I think the 3rd district race between Lipinski and the Nazi, I don't even want to say his name, but the Republican candidate is a Nazi. He got 20,000 votes in the primary. Stepping out of that primary will not help anything. Yeah. I think it's vital that people vote, and unfortunately, I hate Dan Lipinski. I think he's a terrible human.
yeah.
But you don't want the Nazi to win.
Yes, and see that's the case with neoliberalism, because just for everyone to remember, Dan Lipinski has voted on a lot of anti-women issues. He's pro-abortion, not pro-abortion. Pro-life.
He's pro-life. Yeah.
Sorry for it. He voted pro-life, and he's basically
voted against the affordable health care, which has its flaws, like I said, but it's better than nothing. He voted against it like 60 times.
So basically we have a neoliberal blue dog Democrat who is pro-life, and he's going up against a Nazi. Like I said before, and mind you, that election in the 3rd Congressional District, I wish Marie Newman challenged that race, because there was some shady stuff going on. But Daniel, I know you have a question.
So going back to what you were saying with people voting, I look at it like I'm reasonable, and I say, well, it seems legitimate to say that the city or the county will shift a vote by corrupt means by anywhere from 5 to 10%. I think that's a reasonable amount to expect that they'll shift the vote. So my counter to that is just overwhelm them. If people are apathetic, we've said on the show a number of times, if you're not voting, someone's deciding your things for you. Politics is simply people organizing power. And that's what it comes down to. And for people to say, well, I'm not going to vote because the system's broken, what I interpret that is go incumbent. Because that's effectively what their action of inaction takes. Because inaction, as much as people say, well, I'm going to keep my hands off the system and not do anything, that's an action. And that action always benefits the incumbent. So if someone doesn't act or vote in a way that they would vote otherwise from the person that's running, they are putting an invisible shadow vote for Lipinski, whoever it is.
Yeah.
Or the crazy Nazi, which is, and I feel, I'm from the 3rd District originally, and I feel terrible for the voters that this is their garbage pile of choices, but unfortunately, if I was in this situation, I lived in the 3rd District, I would hold my nose very tight and just vote for Lipinski, because...
And sadly, too, just in the 3rd District, too, because this relates back to the story we just covered, they're also building now a asphalt plant near McKinley Park. So, I mean, again... It goes to show you, if you don't, what Daniel said, if you don't get actively involved, you're going to have these neoliberal policies put upon you. You're going to have these neoliberal candidates who say the correct things, but do they ever follow through on the policies or politics that they state they support but never do? Daniel.
So I have one thing. What do you want to say to people that think that voting is a waste of time? Because, like, I look at it like when 3% of people 18 to 25 voted, that says to me, oh, every politician is going to look at any concern that 18 to 25-year-olds have and go, I don't care about that. They're not going to vote.
Yeah.
What does it matter if they don't like me?
Yeah, and just for the record, like the same thing with the progressive outreach for J.B. Pritzker. Mind you, J.B. Pritzker, you're invited to come onto our show and talk to us. You know, with the Pritzker campaign, they're doing a lackluster effort into reaching out to progressives or
they have to do better on progressive outreach, and I've reached out to some people, and I said, if you guys have to hire a real progressive organizer, like hiring somebody and calling them a progressive isn't gonna, because we know each other. Like a lot of us who have been doing this since 2016 and before, we know each other. We don't just have transactional relationships. We're friends. We go to each other's social events. Like we have a deeper bond, I think, than as the establishment does. I think we get along. We're friends.
Right.
So, so how, let's see, millennials, why does it matter? If you're not at the table, you're what's for dinner.
That's my quote.
Yeah, Daniel always says
quote.
That's a quote.
Your vote is the one thing in this country that you have that gives you a voice. And local politics with mini elections matter more than the presidential election. People roll out for presidential elections. I'm just one person. I don't matter. I mean, with the Electoral College, presidential, your voice still matters, but it's a littler voice.
Right.
But everything up to that, you actually have a pretty huge responsibility. Local government, school boards, municipal, local aldermen, that's the stuff you notice. Your stop sign working or not.
Potholes.
I mean,
your school.
I've seen elections locally within Cook County and Greater Illinois where 10 people voted for the water reclamation person, which means that if you just get a large family to come vote for you, you win.
Yeah.
That's
and
what happens.
There's plenty of examples of local races winning by 2 votes, 1 vote. So vote in every election. Like there was a local school council election in Chicago. Vote. That's your child's school. There's some local municipals coming up in 2019 outside of Chicago. Park board, school board, vote. That's your local community. That's the stuff you see, and it matters. So I think stepping out of the process you hand it over to the billionaires. Because trust me, if politics didn't matter, why would giant corporations be spending millions of dollars on politicians? If it was just, they're all the same, they're all crooked, why would anybody be buying into this? Why do our elections cost $70 million if it didn't matter? So until we overturn Citizens United and take money out of elections, all you have is your voice right now, and you have to use it. And I think it's something, even if you hate politics, go vote, read the paper before you roll in, see who's on your side, and go, because it affects you. It's weird when people say that they don't do politics, because I think that's every aspect of your life. Just because you don't take an interest in government doesn't mean the government's not going to take interest in you.
And so, as we're nearing the end of our first hour, we're going to be entering into our break. Rebecca, I have to say this. I am really impressed and happy that you are out there volunteering and organizing, and you're part of Our Revolution Illinois.
Yeah.
I remember looking forward to seeing what's going to happen for 2019 and 2020. So I have a real short two-part question. Number one, I always ask, what do you want to say to people who don't get involved? But you already answered that.
Yeah.
So what keeps you motivated to get actively involved in politics? And two, where can our viewers, our listeners, learn more about Our Revolution Illinois and maybe find you on social media if they ever want to reach out?
Social media. Our Revolution Illinois has a Facebook page, Our Revolution Illinois. We post all of our events there. You could join our mailing list. Go to ourrevolutionillinois.org.
I think.
Org.
Okay.
Org or com. I think it's org.
I'm sure if you type in Our Revolution on Google, it'll pop up.
Yeah.
Google. And then I want to plug 2 events. On May 19th, there's a Medicare for All Forum at 11 a.m. At 4217 South Halstead. And then after another Our Revolution sponsored event, We Rise Up, How Revolutionary Black Women Lead at 1 p.m. at Chicago State. The first event is for single-payer health care. Medicare for All is organizing a nationwide organizing event. They're organizing the organizers to try and push for this within the next hopefully 5 to 10 years. And then Our Revolution's joining with some other coalition and groups with a Nina Turner event, primarily focused on women of color and how they can be revolutionary in this space without having to take neoliberal money. And it's going to be a really great event.
And all
Great.
of this you can find on Our Revolution Illinois' Facebook page, correct?
Yes, on the
Yes, sir.
Facebook page as well.
Fantastic. And just I know we're running short on time, but can you just at least tell us, just in short order, what keeps you motivated to fight for a better future?
My children, definitely. It's really inspiring when I do this work, knock on doors. I take my kids with me, and my son's learning about the environment right now. It's really cute. And he really wants to save the hammerhead sharks. And it's really inspiring to see him take a straw out of my hand and say, this is hurting the sea turtles, and toss it. And when he wants to organize and stop people from harming sharks, he says, let's go door to door. We have to tell people to stop fishing. And I'm like, whoa. And the other thing is seeing the slow progress turn forward. I never thought we would be in a place where marijuana is about to become legal.
Yes, there's a huge
I really
conversation
didn't
about that.
see that was going to happen within the next. When I was in my 20s, I thought maybe when I'm 50, I can't believe it's going to happen.
Don't say that when you're
soon.
50. Yeah, let's hope it's sooner.
Right. But I'm amazed. The tide turning on sexual abuse is kind of amazing. So seeing that slow progress. But the more I meet voters and the more people are really excited, I moved to a community where I was a little shy. I wanted to make friends and then hit them hard with my politics. But I was pretty amazed that when I went to go make some new community friends, I mentioned I was a Bernie delegate. They're like, that's really rad. We love Bernie. And it was, it's everywhere the more you talk to people. So
That's a very good note to end it on. Rebecca, thank you so much for coming on to Hard Lens Media. Please message me those events so I can at least post them onto our podcast on our Spreaker account and our YouTube page, because I definitely want people to know about them. And also for our viewers and listeners, if you like what we do here at Hard Lens Media, we have a webpage, hardlensmedia.com, hardlensmedia.com. We have a Patreon page. Your support is the main heart and backbone to what we do here, and it allows us to have more content, have wonderful guests like Rebecca and other people on our show. So help support independent media, because Chicago, Cook County, Illinois desperately needs it. We're going to enter into our break right now, and other than that, peace, everyone, and see you in the second hour, where we are covering more stories. We're going to have our second guest, a representative from Degenerate Artists Against Fascism. Peace, everyone. Welcome to the second hour. So the music distracted me for a little bit. So we're back, and wow, talk about an awesome first hour. Huge shout out to Rebecca from Our Revolution Illinois. Clearly a wonderful conversation. Hope to have her back on the show very soon. But now we're entering into the second hour, and we're going to cover for this segment a wonderful story and a good story for hopefully a better future. something happening in Korea. The words that I never thought would come out of my mouth. So, Paul, I know you're leading on this story. What is going on between North Korea and South Korea?
So, yeah, we recently had Kim Jong-un, the leader of North Korea, travel to South Korea for a meeting with the South Korean president, Moon Jae-in, which is the first time any North Korean leader has ever traveled to South Korea. So we have a really good example of some diplomacy and some détente that's happening between two countries that are still technically at war with one another.
Wait, I thought they recently also signed a peace treaty indicating that the conflict's over, or am I wrong?
I think it's an intro to a peace treaty.
Okay.
It's
yeah,
like the
it's
first
a
act.
precursor to it.
Okay.
So this news of Kim Jong-un traveling to South Korea and talks was widely publicized. It was broadcast live in South Korea.
I'm pretty sure that had to have been broadcast live because that never happened before in their
it's
history.
super rare.
That beautiful moment, if you have the chance to, not when the show's on, of course, but afterwards, there's a beautiful video. You can see just a clip of them shaking hands and then Kim Jong-un crossing the border and then them crossing back over. And that's such a, if you know South Korean, North Korean history at that, it's a moment that's almost as amazing as anything that could happen on the planet.
I think it's our Berlin Wall moment or something, or at least for Korea, because like at one point Germany was separated. There was East and West, and of course with Korea, it's the largest demilitarized zone in international history, and the fact that we're witnessing something like that to that scale, most people thought that would never happen.
Yeah, I mean, it's maybe not the Berlin Wall moment yet. I mean, it's certainly...
or at least leading up to something
it leads
like
up
that.
to
It's like
something
the
like that,
it's like when that German bureaucrat was talking about how maybe the Berlin Wall would fall down. It's like that kind of a moment.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
a really nice precursor that we hope leads to actual peace.
So one thing that also hit the news this past week is just before this meeting between the two Korean presidents, Mike Pompeo was able to meet. I said we were going to talk a little bit more about Mike Pompeo today. Here it is. Mike Pompeo also met with Kim Jong-un in a not widely publicized meeting, but after the fact they did mention it. And I think this all comes at a time when we've got Donald Trump has been talking about, we're going to talk to North Korea and we're going to get them to get rid of their nuclear weapons. And people are saying, this is sort of a ham-fisted attempt at diplomacy, and you can't legitimize North Korea. That's what they want. How do we trust that they're going to get rid of their nukes? And if you're giving them what they want before you even verify that they're getting rid of their nukes. And I think there's been a lot of attempt to paint this as ham-fisted and clumsy diplomacy when the reality on the ground seems to be that it's working. Yeah. Like, this is progress to the point.
There is also another thing to take into account is that, look, North Korea, economically and socially, they are regressed, way back. They are far behind. I mean, of course, the people know that, technology and things are different outside of North Korea. And I think, sooner or later, I think the leadership had to realize, we can't keep this thing going on for too long. Even China and Russia have moved on the Cold War. They're embracing more technology, advancing new ideas. And I'm not saying, of course, they're beacons of light and hope, but I mean at the same time too, North Korea, there's going to be a point to where it's like we need help because a lot of people are starving. There's a lot of issues affecting at least the northern part of the Korean Peninsula, and I know that they were doing some nuclear testing some time ago, of course, causing everyone to be scared. And one of their testing ranges, I know Daniel and I were talking about this sometime before the show started, and that was they used to do a lot of nuclear testing under this mountain range, and now that mountain range has effectively collapsed and can no longer do its purpose of being a underground testing site.
Yeah, well, part of that also is that they got all the information they would need for the future, so they wouldn't really need further testing in themselves. What I think is also very big on this, I think from an outside view, is North Korea is an ultra authoritarian dictatorship, whereas South Korea is a democracy. And the way that both of those countries, the way that they're organized at their core, is fundamentally different in how power is distributed. Whereas North Korea, you have one leader
and its council.
That's basically a god.
Yeah.
You have the council, and then you have everyone else.
Yeah.
Whereas in the democracy, you have far more groups that you have to ally yourself with, and the president is not permanent.
Right.
So what I'm curious about is peace is signed, how do they unify? Because then they're unifying countries that have completely paradoxical organizations and how they run. Does North Korea, like, how does that work? How does North Korea get to, because I'm sure they're going to have to work in, hey, you can't charge us with war crimes. I'm sure that's going to be in there as well. Maybe they'll say, oh, sure, the people that ran the concentration camps, I'm sure you can get them. I'm sure they're going to have something to work on that. But how do you take North Korea and make it into South Korea? Or is it going to be more like take North Korea and make it more into China? Because China isn't going to want a unified South Korea in a whole Korea setup, because then they lose their buffer, which still is North Korea. Does China go, okay, we can do this, but we get to put military in North Korea? I mean, because it's not just the two Koreas. Then you have the U.S., where the U.S. is usually like, well, we're not going to discuss it at all. North Korea just needs to give up all of our demands instantly, submit fully, in a way that would cause societal unrest and cause them to go into civil war. Civil war from that.
Right.
But it's how do the mechanics of this work in the future?
Yeah, you know something down there, and there's something I want to add on to that, because we watch a lot of the same YouTube channels, we see a lot of the same videos, and the one thing that actually came to my mind right now is Pit Boss, where remember when North Koreans were tasting tasting barbecue food.
Oh yeah, and they're talking about that. One of them said that the reason they escaped North Korea was that they heard something something good to eat outside North Korea.
Right, and but the thing is, there's so many other stories about these North Korean people escaping, from North Korea. And the thing is, the one thing that they did state is like, the two Koreas are very different, because in North Korea you have much more of a tighter community. People of course, there's a lot of surveillance happening there too, so people kind of know what the other person's doing. But at the same time too, when the same North Korean people who escaped North Korea are living in South Korea, they say that it's a very hyper-competitive environment. And it's like you go to the best schools, to the best high schools, to the best universities to get the best job. You're always in competition mode, and there's never time to build family or community. I mean, that's what a lot of the North Korean people were saying. And the thing is, if you are going to try and unify not North Korea, but if you're going to try and unify the Korean Peninsula, I could see China, possibly maybe creating a semi-buffer zone between them and this unified Korea Peninsula, because originally when the Korean War happened, or in the aftermath of it, China and the Soviet Union wanted a buffer zone. They wanted something to keep the Western powers away from them. And if there is to be some kind of peace treaty, what also happens to these same authoritarian figures that were implementing these harsh policies of putting people in concentration camps or executing people just because
executing 3 generations of people?
Yeah, or just implementing these harsh, horrible policies that impacted not only the people but the environment as well. Because a lot of North Koreans are starving. I mean, unless you're in the military, you're getting good food.
Even the military, they're still kind of hungry.
Yeah, they're still hungry. I mean, the only way you're going to eat good is if you're part of the political elite. And what does that look like? I mean, what's their deal going to be? Are they going to be protected? Are they going to go under some sort of international, I don't know, whatever.
Well, we shouldn't get ahead of ourselves.
Yeah.
We're not really talking about reunifying the peninsula. We're really, at this point, just talking about peace on the peninsula. I think we're still going to have 2 separate countries that operate in 2 very different ways. Mm-hmm. And the UN and humanitarian groups are going to continue to have big problems with the way North Korea treats its citizens. But I think that the main thing that we're getting advancement on is denuclearization and the potential for peace. And these kinds of meetings are a really good signifier that we're ready for some diplomacy. Let's not forget that we had a pretty good agreement with North Korea back in the 90s. Under the Clinton administration, we had a deal where we sold oil to North Korea in exchange for them not pursuing a nuclear program. And North Korea is often blamed for breaking that treaty, but the reality is we stopped selling them oil, so that's why they started building nukes. We broke the treaty.
Okay, so we did
even in this particular case, President Moon of South Korea and President Kim of North Korea have said that they don't think that they can come to a real permanent peace agreement without having the United States at the negotiating table, which to me is a really huge signifier of the fact that this has forever been a giant proxy war between the U.S. and Russia, right? This entire conflict has really been, these Western powers acting vicariously through the Korean Peninsula.
Right, and here you have an opportunity. So one thing, though, does the article at least talk about the possibility of more international organizations in North Korea to address the health issues, environmental issues that are impacting North Korea? Because the one reason why I mentioned the environment is I was watching this documentary some time ago, and they built this huge dam and engineering facility that basically kind of starved all the rivers.
But is this the Three Gorges Dam?
I think so.
Is it in China?
No. This is actually in North Korea.
Oh, this is North Korea.
And it's basically a white elephant, which is, and for all those who don't know what a white elephant is, it's just basically like a construction site that really is just built, but it really doesn't serve any general real purpose. And of course, this dam, of course, it's hydroelectric power, but the consequences of it being built damaged the local water resources and really impacted the environment and also affected a lot of farming land.
I also want to throw into this that we have two different peoples again that go into this. We have the alliance with North Korea and China. You have the South Korea and the U.S. And it really, as much as we're talking about between the two Koreas, the real people that decide whether or not this happens is the U.S. and China. Mm-hmm. And it seems like, going off Trump's tweets, because he's always tweeting, he seems very ecstatic about this. I'm sure he's going to be happy to be able to pat himself on the back and said, I ended the Korean War, take all the credit for it.
Yeah.
But I'm sure China wouldn't really care about him doing that much. And I'm sure if they got what they wanted, which is probably going to be something to do with it staying a buffer zone and them having control of it, they're probably going to be happy with it, because then they take what used to be a really volatile country next to them that's violent, that's having all these issues, and then it becomes a productive ally. I'm sure they would be more than happy to do that and work along that way. So this seems like we're at a point in time where at least it appears like everyone that needs to come to the table and want to give the right concessions to make this happen is here and is willing to do that.
Yeah.
It's exactly what it seems like.
And Paul, just answer my question earlier. Is there any talk about more international organizations actually going into Korea or North Korea?
This particular New York Times article we're looking at doesn't have a lot to say about other organizations that are involved. It talks a lot about the prospect of denuclearization and the action for action type things that would need to take place between North and South Korea. And it also talks a lot about John Bolton and basically the op-ed he wrote in the Wall Street Journal advocating for bombing North Korea. So he sort of stands as a potential roadblock to this kind of diplomacy.
Okay, just to repeat what Daniel said earlier, Trump is tweeting all this stuff like, I want to end the Korean War, and or I'm going to end the Korean War, or I'm bringing peace. I'm pretty sure he wants that victory, and if
he wants to be remembered in the history books. That's what he's all about.
Yeah, he wants to be remembered in history books, and I think he'll be damned if somebody like Bolton or...
It'd be really funny if Bolton got knocked out because of this. That'd be an amazing... If this is like the best-case scenario. North Korea and South Korea stop going to war, and Bolton gets fired because of it.
Yeah, no, you do not take away my win-win because it's good. I could see Trump saying something like that. But
we have a bet running on that.
Yes, we... Oh, my God, yes, we do. I almost forgot about it. That's true.
I'm still going to win.
He hasn't said it yet.
No, exactly.
Don't worry, he's going to. Before his presidency, just so everyone understands the contents of it. When Trump got elected, I was going over hypothetical tweets that Trump would ever write, and one of the things I said to Daniel was, it's a pizza bet. Trump is going to state it's either win-win and it's good, and I could see him stating making a tweet.
This is potentially the situation where he would say that.
Yeah, it's a win-win, so it's good. So I could see him tweeting something like that, but Daniel has been saying no, he's not going to do that. So.
Yeah, because he's asking for very specific wording that I don't even think Trump would use. And if he does use, I don't lose either. That's still a win for me.
Yeah, basically it's just going to be a lunch.
For me, it's a win-win, so it's good.
Yeah, it is a win-win, so it will be good. But, also something else that's really positive, too, that I think we're all kind of overlooking is when the Korean War happened, in the aftermath of it, generations of family were split apart. And the very fact there are two leaders shaking hands, working on a peace plan now, it goes to show you that perhaps maybe these families that have been separated by decades of war or at least proxy war, they can finally once again have more time to speak to each other, see each other, and dare I say it, maybe actually have much more longer time to just have an hour or 2 hours just to talk, but to really, you're talking about brothers and sisters, families that can finally say, hey, it is so good to see you again. It is so good that the war is nearing its end, that there's peace, and that they can actually communicate and talk to each other after so many years of being split apart.
The analysis gives me hope, slightly related, unrelated at the same time. I think for a lot of people, until this happened, this seems to me as the same type of probability of North and South Korea trying to make amends and start the process to end the war. I viewed it as, well, it's about as likely as the Israelis and Palestinians able to do the same thing. It's a similar type setup. And it's just, this is, with all the things that are happening in the U.S. all the time, every day, that are, very depressing, stuff that you have to keep persevering through, I never thought that we'd be like, well, the bright side is North Korea. I just want this moment that we're feeling right now of this impossibility, that this meeting would even occur, let alone finalize is a separate story. But the fact that it even would take place, this is a moment that is one unique moment in history. This is going to be in history books. Maybe not as prominently if it doesn't work out.
Right.
But
I hope that it does. And just real short, because I want to give Paul the final word on this, because the one thing I want everyone to take away from this is that if peace is achieved, I think we can also maybe take a backseat just a little bit. Not become relaxed too all the way, but at least look at the point that, okay, we're not getting close to nuclear destruction. I mean, at least now we're having these two countries speak to each other. And, let's remember, North and South Korea, they're not two separate identities. They're really they're a people that has been divided for 60-plus years. And this is a chance for them to finally become unified as a country again.
Yeah, and we just got to do the same with Israel and Palestine, and then we got to do Pakistan and India.
Yeah.
And is there any other major nuclear armed powers?
Probably. You know what? Most likely in this crazy day and age, I wouldn't be surprised. But hopefully peace can be achieved. And one thing I want to say to our U.S. officials, be they Democrat or Republican, Trump's administration, and to the government of China, for world peace, for the ability to have a better future, let's just contribute and just make this thing work. It can work. We're human beings. We're smart. We landed people on the moon. We've harnessed the power of the atom. We have done so many wonders. Let's avoid a devastating, stupid conflict, and let's actually bring peace and have at least a possibility of not worrying about the Korean Peninsula blowing up. Paul?
I want to say one thing on that really quick. I'm always looking forward to the time when humanity can finally enter the era of great projects where we don't spend as much money on our military and we actually can build the future, which we have the capacity to do right now.
Yeah,
we totally do. It's amazing that we can't come to some sort of solidarity as humans and do things like that. One thing that this article goes into that I find curious, we haven't really touched on yet, is it talks a lot about Libya's denuclearization or giving up Libya's weapons, which is an odd parallel to draw because ultimately that was in 2003 and we ended up going to war with Libya in 2009 anyway. So that's sort of a weird thing for this article to be hammering on about. But it talks a lot about John Bolton's response to Libya and the way that it was able to send over in crates its nuclear arsenal and how short of a time it took to verify that they had given up their weapons because there was really very little teardown that needed to be done after that. At the end of the day, what we're looking at is the very beginnings of really good talks and détente between North and South Korea, and hopefully this is a harbinger of really good things to come.
Yeah, it'll be really nice to see how this turns out. But, again, I'm still happy that I get to feel this little nice warm moment that I wish I could just feel more often in a country with unlimited potential.
Yeah. All right. Now I think we do have to. Is there any other notes that we have to end on with the possibility of Korean Peninsula?
I think we covered it.
Okay, great. Daniel, I know you got another story.
So our guest that's supposed to be in is running a little late, so we're going to cover some stuff that we didn't get in the first hour.
Okay.
And on this note, we're going to talk about the Chicago gang databases under review. So what this is about is the way that they organize and run this gang database that the city uses and what's in it. We talked earlier about how people's cars are being impounded for reasons that aren't their own fault. But in this case, it's a gang database where it's anyone could be put on the list if they're deemed that they should be on the list. Anyone that's on the list has no recourse of getting out if it's not accurate. And it's very dangerous because when police in Chicago especially see that you're a gang member, they're more likely to have a very tight grip on their guns as they walk up to talk to you. And we know how that turns out a whole lot of the time. So in this case, there is the gang database has information on 128,000 individuals. And again, they found people that are on this that there's no reason they should be on it. They're not affiliated. Oh, their name was similar. Oh, when we put in them for this person, they were some other person. And actually, as I'm saying that, our guest did just walk in, so this is going to be more of a PSA now rather than talking about it. So this is happening. They're talking about it. They're reviewing this process. So we're going to start following up.
Is there a way to find out whose names are on that list, or if you are on that list?
I don't think it's public, but it's I'm not exactly sure.
I might be on that list. Who knows?
Who knows? Yeah, we could all be. We were talking on the radio about this stuff. That would be something that would make us eligible. But Kit, I'm on you now.
Oh no, you're on me.
Well, okay, that was bad wording. You know what I mean. Go ahead.
Okay, so if you're watching us on our Facebook live stream, if you're listening to us right now, I am proud to introduce our second guest for this hour, representative from Degenerate Artists Against Fascism. Sir, can you please introduce yourself to our live streaming audience and our audio audience?
Yeah, what's up? I'm Ted Sirota.
All right, Ted Sirota. So I think for the most part, we did have a representative from Refuse Fascism, and I know that Degenerate Artists Against Fascism is another branch of Refuse Fascism. You guys have done a lot of collaboration, protesting the Trump administration and its policies. So I think for a lot of our audience, I don't know anything about your organization. So what do you guys do in regards to community outreach, as well as organizing protests and at least using art as a way for people to express themselves?
All right. Well, I mean, first off, I should say that degenerate artists, like, what does that mean? Degenerate Artists Against Fascism. Well, before I forget, we are on Facebook. There's an open page. You could also join we have a closed group, which is monitored very closely. We have had 0 trolls inside of it. So if you're interested in connecting with other artists around the world in a somewhat private, secure setting, as much as we could be, it's a good place to connect. We've got over 2,000 artists in there now.
Oh, wow.
We also have, we're on Instagram and Twitter. So just put in Degenerate Artists, working on a website hopefully pretty soon, and a podcast. So, yeah, a lot of times forget to plug how do people connect with us,
Right.
Also, I found out that, to sort of set the record straight a little bit and just to be clear, I started this group in December 2016.
Okay.
Just, I saw artists around me. Most of the people I deal with are musicians and artists.
Right.
And people they were so depressed and they didn't want to, it was just like Haagen-Dazs and cuddling up with the cat. And I mean, Hillary lost. Now I'm being a little, over the top with it. But, a lot of us have been following this trend in this country for decades now.
Right.
So for me, it didn't hit me as a surprise. It didn't knock me off balance.
Yeah.
It just immediately set me in motion the day that Trump was elected.
Right.
So, not that I hadn't been in motion all 8 years under Obama and all, 8 years under Bush and all the years under Clinton and all the years under the first Bush and all the years under Reagan.
Right.
But this is now a new stage. This is what we're talking about is fascism. This is a leap, a qualitative leap.
Right.
It's a change in how society is governed.
Right.
You know, it's an attack on democratic norms. It isn't easily turned around. So, you know, I felt it was time to act. And as an artist, I'm a drummer. I'm a musician. That's how I've made my life, basically. You know, I express myself through art. I'm very interested in art, in the history of art. Also, my great-grandfather was murdered in the Holocaust in Poland. His whole village was rounded up, men, women, and children, and they were forced to dig their own ditch. And, you know, 200 men, women, and children, including him, who had emigrated here already but went back to sell his plot of land. They left some land there.
Okay.
Bad timing. Yeah. So, you know, I grew up with the story. I had many other relatives that were wiped away in the Holocaust, you know. And I also learned as a child that it wasn't the only Holocaust, you know, that there was a bigger Holocaust that took place here on this soil that lasted a longer time but was much bigger.
And the devastation towards the Native American populations and independent people that were basically exterminated.
Yeah. There was also another Holocaust called the Middle Passage and slavery.
Yeah, I think
Right.
there's that one Holocaust that happened in Democratic Republic, what is now the Democratic Republic of Congo, which was under the rule of King Leopold II. And if anyone's really interested in history and learning the brutal parts of that situation there, read up on it, because King Leopold II definitely passed some very harsh and very proto-fascist policies towards those people.
The Belgian Congo.
Yeah, the Belgian Congo. Thank you. Yeah.
And
which is now the Democratic Republic Congo.
When they did finally elect a democratic, freely elected leader, the CIA had him assassinated. So that's a whole other story.
Yeah.
But yeah, and that's the story of Patrice Lumumba. If people are interested, there's a good movie on it called Lumumba. If you want to know the role of the United States, you know, that type of thing, the CIA in history. However, what we're dealing with here is a broader thing. Like, personally, I'm a revolutionary. I think that this whole system is rotten to the core and cannot be reformed. And that it may be this lifetime, it may not be this lifetime. The earth may be destroyed before humanity has a chance to remove these shackles, you know. But however, I think that is what needs to be done. But that's not where we're talking about necessarily with Degenerate Artists Against Fascism, which, getting back to the point, I set up this group the day that it was announced that Trump was going to announce Rex Tillerson as his Secretary of State. And to me, that was just like, I mean, the whole thing was insane. I knew Trump was a fascist from the moment he stepped onto the stage, whether he knew it or not. He is a fascist, you know. Your actions, your ideology, your methodology determines who you are, not what you say. What you say does too in his case, though. You know, however, that was just like, okay, they're going to make the CEO of Exxon Secretary of State. You know, this is just, you know, fascists double down on everything. You tell them you can't do something, then they do it twice as much, and they shove it in your face. You tell them that, oh, you're colluding with Russia, they tell you, no, you're colluding with Russia. And here's our shred of evidence. So there is no truth, you know. It's about the destruction of objective truth. That's bigger than what we've been dealing with up to this point, unfortunately. Good old-fashioned, you know, horrific for the planet U.S. imperialism, which has been, in my opinion, a nightmare for all of humanity since its inception. That it has been the number one killer, murderer, terrorist on the planet. But that's not what I get people to unite around with Degenerate Artists, which I set up. And then a week later, Refuse Fascism came out in New York. And I read their call to action and their analysis of the situation and what their plan was moving forward. And I said, yeah, damn straight. Every word of it is right on point. And I wrote a 10-point program for Degenerate Artists. Like, here's what we unite around, points of unity. And the last one is we unite under the banner of Refuse Fascism under the call. So politically, people that want to really identify with Degenerate Artists need to look at Refuse Fascism's call, their analysis, and read it and examine it and debate it and discuss it, you know. And if you disagree with 90% of it, let's get into it, you know.
Okay.
So, yeah.
So when it comes down to, of course, dealing with Trump and his administration and his policies, the one thing that a lot of people have said that have allowed for its creation to happen in the very first place was neoliberalism. And as we all know the history of it, it really started during the Reagan administration, and it was continued on towards with the Bush administration, Clinton administration, Bush Jr., and even under President Obama. So really, we all know the threats and dangers of fascism, but also at the same time, too, how do we address really the impact of neoliberalism? Because with neoliberalism, it seems that working class people are denied proper education or the ability to get informed about the arts or even have a sustainable lifestyle because of neoliberal policies.
Okay, that's a good question, and I don't want to dominate the direction, but I also just want to, because I rambled on there a little bit. Mm-hmm. A lot of people don't know what we mean by degenerate artists. And as soon as Hitler came to power in 1933, one of his first acts was to commission the building of a new art museum in Munich, a beautiful new museum that would display, his vision as a failed artist, what Aryan art will look like, what the ideal German art should look like. And across the street from that, they were going to build an exhibit that looked like this on the walls, but much, like crooked and spray paint, and it was the Degenerate art show, right? And there they hung the pictures crooked, and they hung Jew art and Negroid art and Bolshevik art, and it was Picasso, and it was Max Beckmann, it was Otto Dix, it was Marc Chagall, it was Kandinsky. It was all the artists that I would want to be, and the Degenerate art show, which was supposed to be a counter image of what was now going to be accepted in the new society and what was not going to be accepted, They said people lined up around blocks. They were coming in to say farewell to art and culture. They knew that this was going to be the end. The Nazis looted, 20,000 works of art immediately. If you were an art director or a university professor or art historian and you showed this art or taught it, you were arrested or fired, So part of why I did it is to spread this message I didn't understand until I came back out once Trump came to power, how few youth and people even know what fascism means and had ever even heard the story of degenerate art in Germany, because it happened with music too. They gave dance band directors instructions on what was allowed and what wasn't allowed, what tempos were allowed, what keys. Don't play minor keys because they're gloomy and Jewish. You can't play in between, above 120 beats per minute because that's a Negroid tempo. This is stuff that happened, and it's happening again now in many parts of the world. Anyway, so to get back to your point on neoliberalism, kid.
Yes.
I find that a lot of people on the left are putting the cart before the horse with this. Like, we have a fire. There is a state of emergency. Now, has it been a state of emergency under neoliberalist, U.S. imperialist, capitalist regimes up to this point? Yes. Ask the people in Vietnam, ask the people in Haiti, ask the people in Honduras, ask the people in South Korea, or in Korea, on the Korean Peninsula, in the Philippines, in Indonesia. It's been a nightmare. Ask black people in this country about U.S. imperialism and good old Uncle Sam. Like we say, hashtag America was never great. It was never great. Okay, but we need to understand that what's happening now is taking something that is horrific and taking it even to a next level. Okay, it's a qualitative leap. So the little gains that we've won as people, struggled, as all types of people that have struggled for this rights, but especially civil rights struggle, and people, men, women, and children being bombed and lynched and beaten and clubbed and had dogs sicked on them and had fire hoses and refused to be served and refused to be able to go into a front door. And all this struggle that we've gone through, and Malcolm X and little Bobby Hutton and Fred Hampton and Martin Luther King and Medgar Evers and all this murder, Nat Turner, John Brown. And what do we have? We've won some gains, some crumbs in this system, and we need those crumbs to survive. But that is not enough for humanity. For me, as a revolutionary, we need to go beyond that. Okay, but first thing is first, we need to put the fire out.
Okay.
And we need to get rid of these fascists. We're sitting around here watching this now. People are looking to the system itself, the neoliberal system, which allowed this to come. to come to fruition. Because why does fascism happen? You know, they put out this fallacy that fascism could be a left wing or it could be a right wing, and they've turned like they do with everything, with fake news. Fascists. Oh, you're the fascist because you don't let Ann Coulter speak on campus. No, we're anti-fascist because Ann Coulter is spreading fascism and we're countering it. So this is this whole trick, this whole game of turning things upside down, and you know, obscuring the truth, destroying objective truth, destroying what that means. But you know, we're normalizing it, and this is very dangerous. And we're already seeing the consequences around the world. You know, because when you say the big old Uncle Sam says, "Hey, you're fake news," well, you know, then Duterte in the Philippines looks at his press and says, "Hey, you're fake news too, but you're going to jail right now." You know, Erdogan in Turkey just did that. Arrested, 12, 14 journalists and convicted them. They're going to jail. So people in the United States don't understand. Do you want to see where we're headed? Keep an eye on Turkey every day. Keep an eye on Hungary every day. You know, what we're experiencing now is like the 1930s once again. And people here think that, oh, if we pull the lever in November, we're going to go back. What we're trying to say with Refuse Fascism, and I'm trying to say as an artist, is there is no going back at this point. Donald Trump and Mike Pence and their whole regime has been in power for over a year now. This has been uncorked. You can't stuff the genie back in the bottle. It's about putting the fire out now and showing a united front of people in this country that understand that this has to be defeated. And when you start that process, when you see the youth that came up around the the gun movement here and assault weapons and everything, you saw the youth awaken. We need that right now. The 1960s would not have happened without college campuses, without SDS, without the youth, you know, burning draft cards, all of that stuff. We're not going to get rid of these fascists. And if we don't do that, we're not going to get rid of neoliberalism. You can't get rid of neoliberalism first. Fascism is an outgrowth of capitalism. You know, they had a huge crisis in 2008, you know, and they played the card by allowing a black president for 8 years. In my opinion, I'm not speaking as Degenerate Artists Against Fascism or Refuse Fascism, but as me, how I see it, Barack Obama was a release valve for this system. You know, I'm sorry.
Okay, so I know as we're getting close to our nearing the end of our show, I know we got like a few more minutes left.
Yeah, we got 7 minutes left.
Yeah. So I think real quick this will be a two-part question. Are there any kind of projects or events that Degenerate Artists Against Fascism is going to do here so our listeners can know more about it? And also, I know you plugged it already, but I think it's very important for people, again, to hear where they can find you on social media because, you know, obviously people want to contribute. People are very upset with Trump and his policies. So, again, two-part question. What kind of projects or events is your organization working on? And at the same time, where can we find you guys on social media?
Two excellent questions, I might add.
Thank you.
We are actually, our next event is we've had a number of events up to this point. May 13th, which is Mother's Day, Dia de las Madres. So kiss your mom, take her to brunch, and then that night we're doing a benefit called Basta Ya, Latin Music versus the Trump-Pence regime. It's a benefit that Degenerate Artists Against Fascism is putting on in order to raise money for Refuse Fascism Chicago chapter. So we're going to have some great, confirming the bands right now, but some great local Latin bands. We're going to have a jam session, a lot of great Latin jazz musicians and percussionists. There's going to be a lot of dancing. It's a great art gallery, Fulton Street Collective on Hubbard Street. So there is a Facebook event for that. Just search Basta Ya. That means enough. And, you know, because why Latin music? Because, well, we see that one main characteristic of fascism that a lot of leftists leave out when they examine it is the scapegoating and the genocidal factor of it. You know, the build the wall, Mexicans are rapists, there's a caravan coming to, you know, rape your children. That whole thing, the scapegoating of immigrants is the bleeding edge of this. And the ICE raids are very Gestapo-like, the tactics that are, and people are sleeping on that, you know, we have millions of brothers and sisters in this country, our neighbors, you know, people we do come into contact with at the store and in the street who are living in terror and fear, the same kind of terror and fear that people like my great-grandfather were living with under Nazi rule. Okay. That's going on today. So, yeah, and they can find us on social media. Just put in Degenerate Artists in Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And also we'll have a DVD coming out and a video soon because we did a great show last April. It's been about a year now, been a busy year, that we did at Constellation with some great Chicago jazz and world music artists. And like I said, look for a podcast coming out. Been compiling interviews with some great artists around the country. Mm-hmm. And check out the art of people that have stepped up and identified as, said, I'm a degenerate artist. People locally like Julie Wood, saxophonist Tony Fitzpatrick, the artist, Perry Hoberman, who was a projectionist for Laurie Anderson in L.A., and Hal Hefner. This saxophone kills fascists. That's Arrington Dionysus in Portland, a great artist. Karen Fiorito, who did the Trump billboard in Phoenix with the mushroom clouds behind him and the dollar signs that look like swastikas. Mm-hmm. Everyone's getting the T-shirts. And, this is what we have to do. We're not professionals. Everyone's working, trying to make a living, and they're organized. They're in power, We have to unite. We have to come together. We have more than them. That's the thing, But we have to unite as artists, whatever you do. If you're a union member, if you're at your church, whatever walk of life, if you work in a hospital, people need to start making bonds and connections. That's the actual resistance, right. Not voting for some Democratic candidate who's being pushed by the DNC and is pro-life. Right. Okay, this is how we got to where we are. The Democrats following and tailing the Republicans to the right, to the right, to the right, to the right, to the point where you have Bill Clinton, who's where Nixon was.
Right.
Now the Democrats. That's a suicide pact. They need to step out of the way and get behind the people, and we need to make them do that. There's a crisis in society in the ruling class, but the crisis that they haven't faced yet is the crisis of the people and their tens of millions getting in the streets and clogging up the system and gumming up the gears and saying, we will not accept this. Right. You cannot treat our brothers and sisters. You cannot treat the planet like this. You cannot treat us like this. This is beyond the pale. This is illegitimate by any human, standard.
Right.
And we demand that they're gone, like they did in South Korea.
Right.
We'll get them out.
And
Can you imagine we shut down Chicago, New York, and L.A. for a couple days? That's billions of dollars. That's a global financial crisis. That's stock markets, the Nikkei, everything just plummeting. And all we have to do is a bunch of freaking dudes like us and women and children and grandmothers to get in the streets,
right,
and stay there.
Yeah, I do agree with you. I do agree with you, and that's something that people need to do to get actively involved. And Ted, I do want to thank you so much for being on our show, and to all our viewing audience who are listening to us on Hard Lens Media, on our Facebook page, YouTube channel, and here at Q4Radio.org. We'll be back next Saturday. If you want to learn more about us, we have a website, hardlensmedia.com. And if you want to support independent media, Hard Lens Media has a Patreon page. So please, continue to help us out, donate. It's our main heart and backbone so we can produce more content like this. Peace, everyone, and let's all do what we can to build a better future.